Welcome back, everybody, to the Michigan Football Network. And it is a beautiful day. Yet again, we are in the NFL offseason, and we are just barely post combine as we are sitting here speaking. Um, as most of you know, I mean, I guess if you're a new viewer, you might not know this, but I was at the combine in person. I was in the combine too, technically, like literally speaking, I was in the stadium. But anyway, point being, that it was a great time as always. I was only there for unfortunately Friday, Saturday, just because got a job, can't necessarily. Uh, Take that day off. But either way, I saw the DBs, the linebackers, the running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks, which I will say, the amount of people that were there on Friday, totally like perfect amount of people, if I'm being honest with you. Like, there's plenty of seating. It's not like empty by any means, but it's definitely not packed. There's like this quiet over the crowd where it's kind of like you can hear everybody murmuring. It's like watching tennis or golf or something. But it's pretty cool because like you kind of, you're sitting next to somebody who, loves football as well. And you're just kind of commenting things out loud, and other people do the same, and it's kind of like a little football uh like a meeting or whatever you want to call it. I can't think of the word, but a convention. There it is. It's like a football convention in a lot of ways. But then on Saturday, it is like what happened. There is so many damn people here, and it's really honestly kind of hard to get a good seat and to really see up close and personal like you would like to. But either way, it was a great time, and I was lucky enough to be able to see a lot of these guys pretty up close. DB's yeah, or no, I'm sorry, DB's tight ends, not linebackers. Linebackers, defensive ends was the day before that I was unfortunately not able to make it. Um, but DB's tight ends was the first day, and I'll tell you what. We're just gonna go right into our, combine takeaways. I have three personally for the Lions specifically, that were like my big ones, and then we'll obviously talk about more things that happened as we go. But number one, this DB class is deep. Boy, I tell you what, like man, there are so many good safeties, so many good corners, and I do feel like I feel like most Lions fans would agree with me here. It does seem like every year the Lions need something. There's a whole lot of them in the draft. And I don't think, Brad Holmes is, Nostradamus or anything and is able to say, oh, I know there's going to be, all these draftable defensive backs of the year that we're going to need one. But I do think it just kind of aligns that way. So I think we got very lucky that way. All the DBs tested very well. Obviously, we knew it was going to be a pretty deep DB class going into the combine, but coming out, it feels like it's even deeper. A lot of guys really showed a lot of ability on the grand stage, I guess you can say at this point. But that's my first takeaway. What is yours?
Excuse me. Um, in relation to the combine as a whole, or do you have a specific position group in mind?
Just the combine as a whole for the Lions. What did you see that intrigues you or excites you?
Speed. There's a lot of speed. I mean, um, I hate kind of bringing that up because that's what literally everyone is talking about. So it's not really a fresh take on the combine this year. But when that is the talking point, that's the talking point. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was four or five position groups that had the fastest like average 40 time in combine history. Um, and we've kind of seen the trend over the last few years. Like, don't get me wrong, receivers and running backs have always been fast, obviously, but some of these linemen, like some of them are creeping into the late fours and low fives, and that's something 20 years ago we never saw. So I don't know if these linemen are just more athletic, or if they try to focus more on the conditioning aspect of the game, or maybe now that there's a lot more screens and like polls, they're working on that kind of stuff more often. But um, either way, it's happening. Linemen are bigger, stronger, faster, and as a whole, and these, especially in terms of the Lions, there's a couple guys that I had circled going into the combine that I wanted to see how they tested and whatnot. Um, and unfortunately, they tested, I guess I can say too well, where now they are probably going to go before the Lions pick, which on one hand is obviously unfortunate because those are a couple guys I like. However, that means if they are moving up, someone that we didn't think would ever be there sliding down. So it's not a terrible worst case scenario. So um, I'm not going to act like the sky is falling on that. But what? Excuse me. Um, not battling anything, just having a cough for some reason. But yeah, and I think especially with the stuff that happened today with like the Bears and whatnot, I feel like there's a potential to, I don't quite want to say retool, but potentially reevaluate what we can even do in the draft because other teams' needs have changed. Other teams' needs have, um, via trades and whatnot. I know we'll get to Demo later on, but with more capital, that can at least bring up discussions, in my opinion, of potentially trade ups. And even if it's just like from round 4 to 3, not anything in the first round, it still shifts the what position you target in the early rounds, in my opinion, quite a bit.
Yeah, and to go back to something you said earlier about the linemen being bigger, faster, stronger, I think that's just everybody. I think the athletes are just better. I was talking to a coworker the other day, um, yesterday, talking about the combine, and he was like, "Man, every year it's like they get faster. It's kind of crazy. It's like, oh, this position group, this position group." I'm all like, "Yeah, because they do." That's just how it works. You know what I mean? It's like they do that because I know a lot of people love to say, oh, back in the 80s, this NBA player or this NFL player would be better than this guy. No, he wouldn't. They just aren't. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. Like, yeah, there are certain positions and certain players, sure, that could play, like Deion Sanders. Yeah, he could play today. But I just feel there are guys that back in the day were the best of the best, and I feel like they would just be like top 15 today. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things. Like we have way better players now. But my second point with that is the thing that wows me more than that, because I do think, while you do have a good point, linemen do seem more athletic. I do think it is kind of relatively normal to see like a 4.97 or like a 5.05 or whatever for a lineman. What's wild to me is the edge rushers because those dudes are 6'6", 260 running 4.5, and it's like, what the hell is going on, bro? Who was it? Well, actually, it's like every year there's an edge rusher that runs a 4.4. The last few years, it seems like. But Shamar Stewart, for instance, last year had a great testing day at the combine.
I think
Um,
Pierce had a decent one too.
yeah, Pierce. I think Pierce was faster, actually. I think Pierce had a faster 40. I think that's who I was thinking of that actually ran a pure 4.4 because he was flying, dude. And there's guys like, throughout the combine the last few years that have done that. So that's what kind of blows my mind when you see a guy that big and you're like, he's running as fast as a wide receiver. And it's funny because kind of an aside with that, I've seen a lot of memes lately about the quarterback Talon Green, who had a great
Yep.
combine. And I love the player. The combine made me go watch some of his film, and obviously he's not like a pure pocket passer or anything like that. He's not an
No.
amazing thrower, but his arm is solid. I would say pretty damn good. But he has some things to work on. But man, the athleticism is crazy. But point being, he's 6'6", like 220. Tested out of the freaking or out of the what's the saying? I can't think of it for some reason. But anyway, he'd had a great testing day. And sorry,
Sorry, I transferred it to you.
Jesus, I guess so. Um, but no, point being is that they were talking about he should change to wide receiver, blah 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 blah. And then I see these posts that are like, Calvin Johnson probably should have played defensive end. And I'm like, in today's game, there are
Yeah,
some, I think,
yeah.
that are like some 6'5", 240 guys that can run like he could. But my long-winded point here, but point being, it is insane the amount of athleticism we see at the combine as a whole. But my second
Yeah.
takeaway, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to chime in since we're on the topic real quick because I had a guy I saved in a text, but I had to find it, which I did. Markel Bell, Miami O lineman. He ran a 5.36, but he's 6'9", 350.
Hmm.
So I know if you see a 5'3" lineman, not a lot of people would ooh and ah, but when you're 6'9", 350, that is hauling. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's something that we didn't see, 20 years ago or anything like that. So
Yeah, definitely not on that one. And Caleb Banks is another example of a guy like that, 6'6", 345 or something like that, and he ran even faster. So the defensive guys, though, they're a little bit, different. That's kind of why
yeah,
they play
Banks is a
defense.
guy I've kind of circled on my list here.
Yeah. So with that being said, my second takeaway is I think the offensive line this year is going to be very good, and the NFL is going to draft a lot of them. I think it's been kind of a while since we've had a really, really good offensive line class, just like all the way down the board, just athletes, players with potential, players that can play right now, players that can play different positions. Like we got it all this year, man. I mean, you guys are gonna see in my mock draft or our mock draft, I should say, for the show. We draft a lot of offensive linemen in the first round, so be prepared with that because it's like a lot of teams need one. It's a big, time position, and there's a lot of good ones. So, and like you mentioned, kind of to your point with the athleticism and everything of the linemen, it's been a whole lot of good athletes in this class. So I do feel like this is going to be a very good O line class, and I think, like I said, in the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, I think there's going to be a lot of guys picked. So we'll see, but that's just my thought on that. And then my third takeaway is, and this is specifically for the Lions, the linebacker class is also very good. I think there's a lot of good athletes that they might not be like, pure linebackers, but you can get them later in the draft and use them in certain situations and really do well. Like a Devin White, for instance. I know he was drafted really high earlier a few years ago, but that kind of linebacker, I feel like that's just a kind of a really good athlete. They go a little bit later now because we have, guys now that can do both. So I do feel like there's going to be a solid amount of like those blitzers or the coverage types that you can get later. So that's really nice for the Lions because we have a big need at linebacker. And then also, there's a decent amount of pure linebackers in this draft that we could go get if we want one, in the mid round. So I do think this draft is being a little bit underrated, if you ask me. And look, I know why. I think we all know why. It's said every single year there's not top tier quarterbacks or edge rushers. That is literally why. I guarantee you. Go look back at every draft that people said, "Oh, this draft stinks. This is a terrible draft." The two positions it was missing in the top 10 were elite quarterbacks and elite edge rushers. That's all it is. If you look at the positions that are very good in this draft, offensive line, linebacker, you could even say tight end, and there's defensive line as well is pretty good. Um, if you look at those positions, they're not generally the fan positions. You know what I mean? So I think that's really what it comes down to. It's not that it's really a bad class, it's just not a great class at those positions. So I do think it's getting a little unnecessary hate with that. So I do think there's a lot of talent, but we shall
I
see.
agree with you a lot on that. I've seen a lot of people say, um, I shouldn't say a lot. I've seen a lot of people say this draft class isn't as good as whatever the standard bar is for draft classes. And a few people even say, like, trade, if you have a back half of the first round, like, trade your first round pick this year for a first next year and just kick it down
I
the
would
road.
do that. No, I would do that because next year's class is ridiculous, bro. Like I'm telling you,
It
it's
depends
gonna
who's
look
there for me.
who's where for what
Who,
position.
like, for example, let's say Lions are on the clock at 17, and we get an offer for someone's first next year. I'm like, it depends on who's there
I
for me.
mean, yeah, if you're in the top 20, I would say probably don't do that
Oh yeah,
depending
if
on who
you're
you're
like 31,
trading with.
32, of course. But
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like if you can get like if you're the Lions and you're sitting at 17, I wouldn't trade that for a 27 first because we're a win now team, we have needs and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. However, if you're a team like the Titans or whatever the case, like not a great
true.
team,
Okay, fair
I
enough. If
would
you're the Titans,
trade. Like I would trade for 27 picks because next year's class, I think we're going to look back on it the way that we look back on the 2007 class. So I would just
2007.
yeah, that's the Calvin Johnson, Patrick Peterson,
Oh,
the like insane class.
2007. All right.
Oh no, I'm sorry, not Patrick Peterson, Darrell Revis. Patrick Peterson, I
Yeah,
think, was drafted.
Adrian Peterson was that class.
Adrian Peterson, okay, yeah, Patrick Peterson was drafted in
What do you mean, man?
2011.
Jamarcus Russell went number one. That's a terrible class. Yeah, Calvin Johnson, Joe Thomas, Patrick Willis, Darrell Revis, Adrian Peterson. That's just the first in the first 14 picks.
Insanity,
So
yeah. So I think
yeah,
that it's going to end up
that's a
being
nice
like
start
that because there's
for
just
next
so
year. You
much
said?
talent. Yes, and the quarterback class is way better. Like it's just a better class all around, especially if you're talking elite talent.
Yeah, this is a pretty good class. Even guys a little bit later in the round, like
Hmm.
Joe Staley,
Yeah.
like he doesn't have a highlight. They highlight. I'm on Pro Football Reference, and they highlight like Pro Bowlers and asterisk Hall of Famers. But I'm like, they're still solid players here. Eric Weddle, not
Hmm.
highlighted or whatever, which I don't know why, because he is definitely a
Yeah,
Pro
he's a
Bowler.
dog.
Yeah, so I don't know, but that's what's just showing up here. But yeah, off the top of my head, because that was a little bit ago, I did not know which one was the '07 draft, but yeah, the Kelvin Johnson one.
And
Um,
also the 2011 draft, which was Von Miller, Patrick Peterson, I want to say J.J. Watt and Ndamukong
that
Suh.
sounds.
Um,
No, Sue and Watt were different drafts.
oh, they were okay. I might
Because
be
we took
wrong
Sue
on
at
one of
two,
them.
but I know
Yeah,
that year we were talking about taking Watt, but he did not make it to us. I think Watt was the Nick Fairley draft.
that sounds right.
I
Okay,
could
I
be
don't know.
mistaken, but
It-
because I remember being iffy on Watt, but I saw people say we should take him. Hindsight, but
right.
but he was taken before we picked, and I'm like, yes, now we don't have to potentially take him. Silly thing to
Uh,
celebrate now, but at the time,
yeah. Well, hindsight, like you said, is always 2020. For some reason, this will not come up. Okay, here we go.
it's a
Cam
sad.
Newton was number one. Uh, Cam Newton, Von Miller, Marcel Darius, AJ Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, Alden Smith, Tyron Smith, JJ Watt, Nick Fairley. Yep, you were right.
Yeah, okay.
So he was the year before. Okay. Mike Pouncey, Nate Solder. There's a lot of really good players. Cam Jordan. Um, but yeah, so Cam
I
Hayward
forgot
in the
about
late first.
Aldon
But
Smith.
yeah, dude, he was so good, but he
He was a
just couldn't
beast
get
if he
his
could
shit
stay on
together.
the field.
But yeah, with that being said, do you have anything to add on to that before we move on?
No, I'm good to move on.
All right. So, speaking of, the trades and things that you mentioned, there have been some movement with the Detroit Lions, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like we're both kind of on the same page with this, and I also feel like um, it's fairly simple. Okay, David Montgomery was traded to the Houston Texans. Okay, personally, I am totally fine with it. Listen, I love David Montgomery. The face you're making makes me feel like we might not be on the same page with this. And you know what? It's always good to have some disagreement because we never do on this show for some odd reason. No, but with that being said, David Montgomery was traded, and I like the trade. We got a fourth, we got a seventh, we got a depth lineman. Look, that is the best possible offer we were ever going to get. We got third round value plus a depth offensive lineman. That is great value. And personally, David Montgomery's probably got two more really good years. And after that, he's probably going to be a solid running back for another year or two. Okay. We were going to have to pay him $18 million over the next two seasons. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to pay two running backs $30 million because Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get 20. Also, if you think about it this way, David Montgomery was becoming a backup running back, and I don't mean talent wise, I mean simply his usage. He was becoming an actual backup more than a RB2. So if you look at the first year with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery had 1,000 yards and like 13 touchdowns or whatever. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I can't remember exactly how many yards he had, but it wasn't as many as the next season. Because I know his rookie year, his usage was kind of all over the place. I want to say he had like 700 rushing yards or 800 or something like that. But I could be totally off.
Looking it up.
And then the next year, David Montgomery went down to like 700 and something, and then Jahmyr Gibbs got a little bit more. And then the next year, David Montgomery went down a little bit more, and Jahmyr Gibbs got a lot more. So if you just look at it that way, David Montgomery was being phased out. So like, it makes sense for me to get the value that you can now.
Yeah, as a rookie, he had 945 yards, 10
Okay.
touchdowns.
Okay, so I was
It
a
obviously
little bit
went
off.
up from there.
Right. So, but point being, we weren't going to get much value for Montgomery next offseason. I do feel like, unfortunately, he is
Oh,
replaceable
hell no.
with how we were using him. And I also think that this year there's a lot of to solid to good running backs on the free agent market that'll get like $3 million. So if you think about it this way, we saved what, 6 million from getting rid of Montgomery. We got a fourth, a seventh, and a depth of lineman. Then we go sign a running back for 3 million. We just basically traded David Montgomery for his replacement and a fourth, a seventh, and a depth lineman. And that for me is a fat ass W. As a GM, like, I'm sorry, if you're the GM, you would sit there and go, that is exactly how I want to do things because he's an aging guy on a not so great contract and you got good value for him. And you got depth at a piece you really, really need. So,
Yeah, it's one of those things where I can kind of see both sides of the coin. I understand the trade. Um, I did not want to trade him. I was very vocal about that. But obviously, I'm not behind the scenes. If he says, "Hey, I want to go somewhere else," like you have to do that. Otherwise, it's terrible for business. Then players obviously talk. If you don't trade him, because I've seen some people be like, "Oh, you don't have to trade him just because he asked for it." You do. If you don't, the word of mouth gets around. Free agents won't want to come here. People wouldn't want to sign extensions here because we don't treat our players right. Yada yada yada. For those that don't know. So if, and I'm assuming he did, asked to go out, I I'm okay with the value they got back for all the reasons you mentioned. I think the lineman is not as much of a throw-in. I hate to say this, but kind of like a nothing because obviously the picks are the core of what we got back. But he can be, in my opinion, a serviceable backup. I really hope he's not starting, but he can be a serviceable backup. He's made starts at both guard positions and center, so he gives us some of that versatility, kind of like Glasgow used to.
and
And
speaking of
he's
that, getting him basically allowed us to release Glasgow. So it saved us $6
exactly,
million.
exactly. So we got him for cheaper. He's only I think he's 26, maybe 27 before the next. Like he's still fairly young. So, I mean, I don't think we're gonna tap into some un thought of potential. Although if anyone can, Hank Fairley might.
I was
Um,
gonna say I think we might be able to. I've seen some film of his over the Twitter sphere, and I mean he was a second round pick a couple of years ago. Like I
yep, out
feel
of
like
Penn State.
there is. I think there is untapped potential. Now, am I sitting here going, "Oh, he's our starting center next year"? No, sirree. I will not say that. However, I will say now I feel a lot better if somebody gets injured or something goes
Yes.
wrong, or if we don't get like the Connor McGoverns or the Tyler Linderbaums and we settle for a Cade Mays. I feel a little bit better because it's like we got guys we can shuffle around and make it work.
And he has experience as well too. So,
Hmm.
like I said, the compensation I like. The trade I don't like just because I rather have Montgomery, but I get it. But I just wanted to bring up a question, and it's literally hypothetical, just to kick the tires on the thought process, because I do try to go in depth and look at all of the angles of things. What if the Lions kept Montgomery and traded Gibbs?
Brad Holmes should be fired.
I think you can easily get a first for Gibbs.
Not worth
Gibbs
it.
is due a new contract, and he's gonna get 20 to 22 a year. Montgomery's still under contract for 18 million over the next 2 years. And like I said, I'm not saying we should have. I'm just saying, what if we could have saved about 13 million in cap space? Would have got a lot more picks and a lot more things to fill the other holes on the team. We're
I
due a
mean,
lot of people extensions. And once again, I'm not saying this is what I would do, but I think it's at least worth a hypothetical.
okay, I think that's where we're gonna differ. I don't even think it's worth a hypothetical personally because it's like we would have to go sign another number one running back because Monty just is not that at this point of his career. And look, man, I think this is gonna be the only time we disagree. Well, not the only time, but the only time we disagree this far
Yeah,
because I feel like this is kind of just your fandom getting in the way of your analyst and
it might be.
analysis because it's like I've seen a lot of this on Twitter and that's really what I've kind of chalked it up to because like dude, if you watch Montgomery play, he is still a very good running back. However, I would not want him to be my bell cow running back. And I'll tell you what, I know Houston went out and traded for him and blah 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 blah. They still have Woody Marks, folks. He's not gonna
Oh,
be their
absolutely.
freaking. He's not gonna be their Adrian Peterson, mentioning
Yeah.
an elite running back. But point is, I still think he's a great player. But I do think if you just look at it for what it is logically, it was the best move to make. Like,
I agree with you. I'm just like I said, I just think, and once again, I would not trade Gibbs. I would give him his 20
well, and
million and
and
move on.
and
But I just like I
technically,
said, I
go
think
ahead.
it was
Sorry.
just worth the like I said, I just think it's worth the conversation because yes, obviously Gibbs is better. He's younger, he's more durable because he's at less wear and tear, but that's what makes you potentially be able to get a first round pick. And I like Montgomery a lot. Like don't get me wrong, he does only have I think 2 to 3 more like solid productive years, and then unfortunately the way of the running back it just kind of goes. But if we were trying to win just this next season, because I'm pretty sure we can get a first and fill some of these holes. I just thought, like I said, it was worth a conversation. It's out of the box thinking, and I totally 100% understand if anyone watching this is like, this guy doesn't know shit. I get it.
Well,
I
and
get it.
I don't think I don't think it's necessarily that at all. I just think it's a valid I think it is a valid question. I just think in excuse me, the realm of everything, no. Like I get the hypothetical question, but it's like, yes, you do pose a good point. It would be more value or whatever the case, but I just think it's creating holes when you don't need to for something that at the end of the day doesn't improve your team necessarily for sure. And the only reason I say that is because what are we going to get? Who's going to trade for him? Like, are we going to get a late first this year? Like, what does that do for us? Who do
Well,
we get at the
someone would give up
pick?
a first. But yes,
I know
that's a
they
valid
would. I
question to
know they
bring up.
would. I know they would give up a first. I'm just saying, like, are we going to take a backup tackle with it? Like, if that's the case, then why would we do that? You know what I mean? Because that's
Yeah,
kind of where we've
fair.
been with this conversation. It's like if we take our first round pick and take an edge, and then we have like pick 26. I'm just saying that not because the
Yeah.
team, just the number. We would probably take a tackle at that point. I don't, or I mean, I guess maybe a running back, but even then, it's like, okay, we just traded a running back for a running back, and this guy's probably not as good. You know
Yeah,
what
but
I
he's
mean?
not going to make 22 million a year.
I'd pay him. I'd rather pay him
Oh, like
personally
I said, so
for the
would I. I
drop
just
off
thought it
in
was worth
talent.
the
Like,
conversation point. But yes,
yeah,
like obviously Gibbs is, in my opinion, a top three running back. And then, not that I put too much, because as you were speaking, I thought of it. But I'm like,
hmm
as I didn't put too much thought into it, but just adding on to that side of the argument,
hmm
so to speak, is besides, actually the Eagles won before they paid Saquon, didn't they? Because no
yep.
Super Bowl team has won with a running back making up more than, I can't remember what the percent was, but it was X percent of their salary cap. So, like, don't get me wrong, Gibbs is obviously elite. He's amazing. He deserves every penny of the extension he's about to get. But not too many teams have won and gone far with a super expensive running back.
Well, think about it this way. He won't have that percentage of our cap because he won't be getting the same amount that Saquon got in terms of percentage of the cap simply because we're going to extend him a year early, which means that likely it's going to save us like $5 million per year probably on Gibbs's contract. So if you think about it that way, by the time that 22 million hits, it's probably going to be under that threshold of the percentage of cap. I'm not sure what that threshold is, but my
Yeah, I
assumption would
can't
be it'd
remember
be
the number,
closer.
unfortunately.
But either way, yeah, I don't hate the question, but moving on to the next, report out of the combine was agents are saying the Lions will not be aggressive in free agency, which I don't understand simply because, okay, I know we don't have money. Don't get me wrong, but we can get a lot of money with restructures, as we've talked about many times on this channel or on this show. With that being said, I still believe that the Lions will do these restructures and be aggressive in free agency simply because Brad Holmes basically said they would. I mean, he said we're going to be aggressive, go after the positions we've needed the last few years because blah 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 blah. And my thing is, sorry, if we are not being aggressive in free agency, the only reason I can say that would be is money. And if it's money, it means we didn't restructure, which means one of two things, or both. We have cheap owners still, and they don't want to pony up the dough, or I don't know if they see Jared Goff as the future. And I'm not saying that now. I'm saying if they decide to not be aggressive in free agency and they decide not to restructure his contract, the only reason you don't restructure get Jared Goff's contract is because the owner doesn't want to pay the cash, or you're like, hey man, in 2 years we might cut him. You know what I mean? Like because if you're putting that 60 million or 50 million dollars on the next 2 years, that's a $25 million dead cap right there. So if you cut him, which now if you cut him in 2 years, it would be $0 dead cap. So that's just something to think about. But that's really all I've got on that report because we'll see what happens. I expect them to be somewhat aggressive. Now I don't expect them to go get the number one guy at every position or anything nuts like that, but
Oh, let
get
me
a
adjust my list then.
get a starting center, get a freaking, whatever the case. So we'll talk about
Hendrickson,
that.
Linderbaum, Lloyd.
See, you got it. Um, if this was Madden, that is what we would do.
Oh,
But with
absolutely.
that, with that being said, though, the other report is Tate Ratledge is likely to move to center, which personally I do not love that. I would rather keep Ratledge at right guard and go sign a veteran center for two reasons. Number one, you have a rookie right guard who is damn good, and he looks the part for the position. I just feel like he looks a little too thick to be a center, a little short armed. But the second thing is, I would much rather have a veteran center in the middle of my offensive line than a guy that's just learning the position, especially as a contending team with a guy that is a pocket passer. Okay. Because you're not going to be able to have Jared Goff catch a snap to the right and then roll out because his center got blown up. You know what I mean? Or he made the wrong protection or whatever the
Yeah,
case.
he's not that guy.
No. And I would rather have a veteran because he's going to make the right protections. The snap's going to be good every time. He knows what he's doing. He's going to lead the offensive line. And I just feel that is the smartest way to do it, especially considering, like, okay, who's going to play left and right guard? Are you just going to have Mahogany and Frazier? I don't really love that personally. I feel like we need to sign or add a veteran at some position. And if you're going to add a veteran guard, you might as well add a veteran freaking center. So that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on it because once again, not to keep repeating myself, but I try to look at all sides of the scenario. And this is something that they mentioned last year. So, I mean, it's been something that's not exactly a new idea. So, it's been somewhat on my mind during the season, even. And as a whole, I don't like it, but I see some of the appeal with doing it just because center is such a vital position. And don't get me wrong, guard is too. You know that better than I do, even. But and obviously we missed. I mean, don't get me wrong, we miss Zeitler, but we really miss Ragnow. And I know there might be a learning curve for him because he's never played center in a game. I know they said at Georgia he was like the emergency center, and he got a few center reps at the training camp, but that's not playing center. And he played very well. I was huge on Rutledge in the draft process. He played very well at right guard, and I'm also a not rock the boat kind of guy. Like I've already seen people say, well, like when Decker retires, because this is obviously his last year, move Sewell over, and I'm just like, just I don't think he'll struggle at all at left tackle, but we know he's just a damn good right tackle. Just leave him there and let him do his thing. I have the same feelings on Ragnow. I'm sorry, Ratledge. And I'm like, just leave him at right guard. Between him and Sewell, your right side is set for the next 5 to 10 years. And maybe, like you mentioned, go get a rookie. Go get a veteran center in free agency, like a McGovern or Linderbaum, but he's expensive. Um, I was big on the Linderbaum camp, but then I heard that report he's asking for 25 a year, and I'm just like, we can spend that elsewhere. I really like him, but my God, 25 a year.
I don't know. I feel like I've been saying that for months. I feel like ever since
You
the first
have.
time I've heard about Linderbaum, I'm like, he's too expensive. He's going to get like 25, 28 million a year. And everybody was like, oh, I don't know if he's going to get that much. I'm like, bro, he's the best center on the market, and there's a lot of teams that need one. So that's just how that goes,
Yeah, but you also
unfortunately.
said Willis is only going to get 10.
Hey, I'm still not wrong yet, am I?
Oh, no, I just wanted to bring that back up again.
Well, I mean, he's probably more, I would say he's probably more likely to get closer to 10 than 30. I mean, if you're the Cardinals, especially, why cut Kyler Murray if you're going to go sign a 27-year-old 6 foot quarterback that hasn't done much? You know what I mean? It's like,
I was laughing
what's
when
the
I saw
point?
that report that he's linked to Arizona because I'm like, he's like a younger Kyler Murray.
He's not even younger, dude. He's
He's
literally
not.
not younger.
Oh,
No.
jeez. Okay.
He's like a year younger, maybe, because he's
Oh, jeez.
27. I know it sounds like it seems like he'd be younger, but he's
Yeah.
27. So I think
Where does
Murray's
this time go?
28 now.
Oh, jeez.
But
Okay.
yeah, with that being said, overall, the combine, we heard a lot, we saw a lot, and we still know nothing. So that's just kind of where we're at. And unfortunately, the Lions traded David Montgomery, and Graham Glasgow was released. He is most likely going to retire, based on everything I've seen and heard. Which more power to him, man. At least he got to finish his career in Detroit as he would have liked to, I assume. And I assume cutting him, obviously saves us some money, but it does kind of help him out because it's like, look, man, if you're going to retire anyway, you just got to keep 2 million because we only saved 6 and he was getting paid 8. So with that being said, though, to wrap up the Lions portion of the day, I we are going to go back and forth, naming our favorite targets for the Lions in free agency. As free agency will start next Wednesday, and we won't see you again until then, most likely. So, wanted to get this out of the way. We might do a free agent special. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Stay tuned. Um, but with that being said, my number one free agent target for the Detroit Lions is Connor McGovern. Like we just talked about, center position, I think he's going to be relatively affordable. I was going to say cheap, but it ain't cheap. He's going to cost like 12 million, probably 10 or 12 million a year, which, if you think about it, isn't that much more than we were paying Glasgow. So I don't hate it at all. Only 28 years old, starting center for the Buffalo Bills the last few years. And, he has been a calm, consistent center, which is exactly what the Lions need right now. We don't necessarily need, as much as I'd love Tyler Linderbaum, we don't necessarily need to go get another Frank Ragnow. We just need somebody that can be steady, consistent, do the job every time, make the right checks, block the right guy, call the right, pass protections and things like that. So Connor McGovern is my number one for those reasons.
My number one is Trey Hendrickson. We have been, as a Lions conglomerate, begging for um, a more marquee name for a not a rotation like a Pascal and Muhammad and guys that just constantly are rotating, but that guy that is just play in, play out, um, that Robin to Hutch's Batman. And for whatever reason, the Bengals did not elect to trade him or tag him or sign him. They just let him walk away. So they can enjoy that third round compensatory pick they'll get from the league. But I don't think he's going to cost as much as um, I would say like the elite. Like I don't think he's going to get like Hutch or Miles Garrett money. He won't be cheap, but I think we can get him maybe around like the 25 to 28 a year mark, and I'm hoping for only about 2 years. But he can rush the passer like no one's business. If you haven't watched film on him, over the last 3 years, he has more sacks than Hutch. So don't get me wrong. I don't know. I think Hutch will still be that guy that demands the double team and whatnot, but he's not to be ignored. I know when we played him, granted, that was the game that Decker was out, so that was actually Manu's first ever start at left tackle. But Manu had his hands full the entire game, including with the chips and whatnot he was getting from the tight ends. So Trey Hendrickson would be my number one target for the Lions.
Yeah, and I unfortunately don't think we'll be able to afford him, but if we got him, I would definitely not be upset. For me, my number two is Tyler Biotish, another center. I think you guys are going to see kind of a this. You're going to see the same thing over and over here because that's what I think we need. We need a center for similar reasons as Connor McGovern. He is a veteran. He's done it, and he is only 28. He should even be cheaper than Connor McGovern, but I just don't think he's quite as good. Now, do I think it's that big of a drop off that if we got Biotish, I would be totally upset? No, that's why he's my number two. But him getting cut was kind of out of nowhere, and pretty surprising to me. So I would like to kind of look into that a little bit more and figure out kind of what happened. But the Bears also just met with him today, so he might be off the board faster than we thought. And as far as I am aware, a player that got released can sign at any time, so they could sign him whenever they want. So, with that being said, that's my number two.
Unfortunately, what happens in this program from time to time is we agree. My number two is Tyler Biadasz. And I did not make him my number two just because he was your number two. Because we have one more that agrees, but we have him in different spots. But he's young. I liked him coming out of the draft from Wisconsin. He, I feel, could benefit greatly from being on our line with more solidified people next to him, like a Ratledge and hopefully Vega from Penn State in the draft. And I feel like in between those guys, he would flourish as well as be cheaper than Connor McGovern. I have him on this list over Connor McGovern just because, in my opinion, he will be cheaper. So I figured if we are trying to, at least in my line, go after a big fish like Trey Hendrickson, I will have to go after the third center, in my opinion, behind Linderbaum and McGovern because obviously money's not free.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that kind of goes into the way my top five goes. I tried to stay as realistic as possible in terms of the money because I'm just not sure how much money we're going to have. And I know we're going to have. I genuinely believe we are going to sign a free agent center. I don't think we're going to move Ratledge over. I think cutting Glasgow, getting Scruggs, I think they're like, all right, now our next move is go get that veteran center and move on from there. And I think that might be all we do in free agency in terms of big moves. So we'll see. But I mean, I wouldn't be upset if that is the case because that is our biggest need. But with that being said, my number three is a guy who a lot of people are not talking about from a multi-time Super Bowl winner, and he's only like 26, I think, or 25. Leo Chenal, the linebacker from Kansas City. A lot of people are talking about Devin Lloyd. A lot of people are talking about oh my gosh, I'm spacing on his name. The guy from Green Bay.
Quay
Quay
Walker.
Walker. Yeah, which I'm a big fan of. However, he's slated to get $7 to $8 million a year, which is quite a bit. Which I'm surprised Leo Chenal is his market value per spot track is only like $4 million. Look, I'd pay him eight. I think personally, he's a damn good player, especially as an outside linebacker, which is exactly what we need. And I mean, The linebacker core of Leo Chenal, Jack Campbell, and Derek Barnes would be disgusting. So much athleticism. All three of them willing to hit you. They can line up all over the place. So that's why Leo Chenal would be my number three.
Yeah, my number three is Nick Cross. He is a free safety from uh, the Colts, and over the last two seasons, he has had over 120 tackles each season. His interception numbers went down a little bit last year with only one, but he had three the year prior. He is super young. He's still only 24. He'll be 25 by the time the next season starts. To be honest, I don't know why the Colts are letting him test free agency, but I've seen a handful of people that, in my opinion, I like if I was the Ravens, I wouldn't let Linderbaum hit the market. So teams are, just choosing to build their team this way or that way. And with the injuries to Branch and Kirby Joseph, I think safety is unfortunately a higher need than a lot of people think.
Yeah, and I would agree, as you'll see a little bit later on my list. But my number four is Cade Mays, the center from Carolina. Like I said, you're going to see a lot of the same throughout my list. I think we have one huge need and then a bunch of, all right, we need a guy here, we need a guy there, but one absolute glaring need, and that is the center position. And that's why I put Cade Mays here at four. Obviously, I'm not in love with Cade Mays, the player, necessarily. I wouldn't be mad if he's the eventual guy that we sign, but I also wouldn't be jumping up and down with joy either, just because I feel like he is a moderate upgrade from Glasgow. And as we've said on this show, I am not the guy who thinks Glasgow absolutely sucked last year. Was he great? No. But we were asking him to play a position he hadn't played in years. He signed here to be a right guard and then never played right guard, which is kind of, messed up because that's the position he wanted to play. And he did the best he did with that. But with that being said, I think Cade Mays is just a little bit better than Graham Glasgow, which obviously is an upgrade. And I think is I would say a mid-level starter. Which, like I said before, I don't know if we necessarily need anything more than that, as long as guys like, Mahogany and Ratledge can take that next step, or even a Frazier. I think Frazier might not be in our left guard, so we'll see. But that's why I've got Cade as my fourth.
My fourth guy, I have Jalen Phillips. I wanted to acquire him at the deadline, and unfortunately, like many players I like, Philly gets him. And I feel like he's more at this point in his career, because don't get me wrong, he's not that old, but he's kind of settling into a role, in my opinion. I think he's more of a third down pass rusher, not an every down guy like Trey Hendrickson, in my opinion. However, he still provides value. I don't think he would be that expensive, and this would be, in my opinion, a backup plan if we don't get Trey Hendrickson. I would not go after him if we do. Um, and just like obviously we'll go back and forth, but with the next name on my list, he would not be in addition to the other people I've mentioned. But if they're not them, then this. So I'll send it back to you on that one and talk about my guy in a minute.
Yeah, so number five, we actually agree on something. Nick Cross, the safety from Indianapolis. Now, I really like him because all the things you mentioned. He's a rangy safety, only 24 years old, and also he should be pretty cheap. I think Spot Track right now has him at like $4 or $5 million a year, which I think is pretty cheap for a guy like him. And I will take Nick Cross as a starter, but if you talk about him once Branch and Kirby come back, we have probably the best safety room period in football, maybe ever. Because I know a lot of people are saying, Branch and Kirby could be the best safety duo ever. Well, if you add a 24-year-old starter level player like Nick Cross there, it's even better. So that's my fifth guy.
Absolutely, and you can always put Branch when he comes back at the nickel too. So like we
Mhm.
can always make it work.
Which
I
cuts
did
out
not
another need. So
absolutely, and I did not see him being that cheap. So that does surprise me, but I would absolutely give him that, like without a doubt. Hell, I'd give him probably seven just to shoo away some other people because I do think highly of him. Um, but dang, okay, then he probably moves up my list if I thought he was that cheaper, to be honest. But my number five is Devin Lloyd. I brought him up a few times. He is a young, I'll say great. I was gonna say phenomenal, but I'll say great linebacker. He's still only 27. Um, I once again, he's another guy where I don't know why he's hitting the market. He is ultra productive. He does a little bit of everything. He has a couple interceptions, a couple sacks, some pass breakups, some forced fumbles.
Well, I think we lost you, James. Well, we lost James, but with that being
Um,
said, oh,
had I would
he
say
might be back. Nope. Okay. This is how it usually goes when Riverside decides to stop working, unfortunately. But with that being said, to wrap up the show, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. We're gonna go ahead and go through our
so
post combine mock draft here. Oh, James.
what?
Okay. I lost you there. You've been gone for the past like minute and a half. So,
Oh, I've been
um,
talking this whole time. My
yeah.
apologies.
All good. It's just I haven't heard any of it, so I
Oh,
just
dang.
kept going, unfortunately. So, but we heard
My
who you
bad.
wanted. All good. We heard who you wanted, Devin Lloyd. The only thing I would say about that is, the money, but I would love the player. So, with that being said, just to wrap the show up here, brought to you by Stick to the Model, baby. The link is in the description, and use our code MFN 2026 and save. So, with that being said, we are going to go ahead and go through our post combine mock draft kind of quickly because there's not a ton of changes. Okay. If you went back or if you watched originally our first mock draft, you're going to see a lot of the same here. Fernando Mendoza at 1, Arville Reese at 2. That stays the same. Francis Maui Goa at 3. This is the first change from last time. I had them originally selecting Ruben Bain, the edge out of Miami, actually. But I do think the Arizona Cardinals, by cutting Kyler Murray, number one, signals a full rebuild. And number two, I think Ruben Bain's testing numbers kind of put him down the list a little bit. And as you'll see, it's not too far, but it is down a little bit. So I really like the idea of getting them another bookend tackle for whatever quarterback they end up getting next year. And then we also have David Bailey going to the Tennessee Titans, probably the best pass rusher in this class. Personally, I'm a Ruben Bain fan on film, but I do think David Bailey's testing numbers, because they're very similar film wise, but his testing numbers kind of blew Baines out of the water. So that is the top four there. Any comments you got on that?
No, I feel like the Bane versus Bailey, I don't want to say debate because obviously it's not heated or anything, but conversation kind of reminds me of the Walker versus Hutch. It's kind of like this guy has a higher ceiling and he might develop into more, and Bane just has the numbers and the better film just right now.
Yeah. And I can agree on that. Spent now number 5, the New York Jets take another tackle, Spencer Fano, out of Utah. Obviously, the Giants have a big need at tackle. They have needs elsewhere too, but I think right now, this is probably their best bet on the board. And then our first huge move up. I don't know if we even had him in the first round last time around. Um, but Monroe Freeling, there has been so much buzz about this guy coming out of the combine. He absolutely destroyed the testing on all accounts, really. So I've seen this pick over and over and over in everybody's post combine mock. And I think I'm going to stay steady with that as mine as well. And then Ruben Bain finally goes at number 7 to the Washington Commanders, which I think Commanders, if they got this, they would react the same way Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell did when we drafted Jameer Gibbs. And by that, I mean they're yelling and smacking the table because that would be an absolute steal. But from everything I've been hearing, it does sound like Ruben Bain is going to fall just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of these picks. Fano is a hell of a guard, or I'm sorry, tackle, but for some reason I've been seeing reports that he's taking reps at center and is willing to change positions. I don't know if he's just talking about being a team player or what, but he is a damn good he's a right tackle. He's a damn good tackle, and I would just leave him there and enjoy that.
Hmm.
Monroe Freeling, absolutely. Once again, he's a great left tackle from Georgia. And then Bain, in my opinion, is one of the best players in this draft. So I think that is a steal, like you said, with Washington taking him there at 7.
Yeah, and that's a great point with Fano because that's part of the reason why I like him here because they do need offensive linemen and they could bring back Illuminor and then move Fano inside. So either way, I really like it for them. And then moving on, another big change. We have Jeremiah Love going number 8 this time to the New Orleans Saints, which I know we kind of talked about last week a little bit. But Jeremiah Love is probably the best player in this entire draft period. Obviously, running back position, excuse me, takes the value down. Oh, excuse me. Takes the value down a little bit, but Jeremiah Love is a dog. He tested out of the frickin' stratosphere at the combine. Did all the drills too, so he's shown himself. And then I also, a big reason why I changed this pick was not necessarily because Love was so much better. I also feel like Carnell Tate didn't necessarily test as well as most hoped. So that moves him down my board just a smidge, not a lot, but when you're talking taking a wide receiver in the top 10, when you already have a good wide receiver one, he's got to be pretty damn good. So I think they would opt for the best player in the draft here. And then at number 9, Kansas City takes Caleb Downs. Now, I know a lot of people are moving him down their board even more because of the news that came out. I only have him down 2 spots. He originally went to the Commanders at 7, which honestly, I might have still mocked him there if Ruben Bain wasn't there, but taking Bain there just makes too much sense. But Downs here, he does have that, partially torn meniscus and a degenerative ACL. Now, I know a lot of people are freaking out. Degenerative. No, it's not the same as the degenerative knee condition we've seen with like Todd Gurley and things like that. The ACL can be repaired. That's what they do with ACL surgeries. So if his ACL is degenerative, they'll just repair it. So he'll just have to have an ACL surgery at some point. And I don't think that's going to be that
Does that
necessarily big of a deal.
does that differ from Kirby's?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
And then with that said, number 10, no change here. Cincinnati Bengals take Sonny Styles, and honestly, they're probably going to be surprised he's even available. I almost took him in Kansas City, but I just feel like they had a way bigger need at the defensive back position as a whole, and I think Caleb Downs makes a ton of sense for them. So,
Yeah, I like all 3 of these picks, unfortunately. I mentioned Love to the Saints before because I do feel like Kamara is kind of his comparison. Downs to KC
I
annoys
mean,
me.
I don't know about that comparison personally, just because, like, I don't know. Anyway, either way.
Okay.
I'm just
Um,
saying, like they're not the same at all. I mean, I know you're not necessarily the one comparing that, but like they're such different players. Like Jeremiah Love is bigger, faster, he's better. Um, yeah. So I just think,
I say, especially with Kamara getting up there in age as well. But
yeah.
as you mentioned, a lot of people say he's probably the best overall player in the draft
Hmm.
if you take away, positional value and whatnot. And when the Lions got their guy and kind of threw positional value into the wind, it worked out pretty well for us.
Hmm.
Um, so Downs to KC. As much as I hate Ohio State, they have such elite talent on that team. Downs is an amazing safety. Um, I hope he falls farther. Maybe he could be there at 17. Maybe. Um, doubt it, but
I mean, I
the
wouldn't necessarily rule it out, to be honest with you.
if he is there, I would have to take him just because we need a safety, as we mentioned with Cross on our needs and whatnot, and just the talent is too much to pass up. And then Styles, once again, Styles is my dream pick at 17.
Hmm.
So obviously, I don't think he's going to fall that far. There was already talks of him not being there at 17 prior to the combine, and he absolutely killed that combine. So I think it's very far fetched that he would not be anywhere near us. So it makes sense, but it annoys me.
So yeah, and it's funny because with that, with the Sunny Styles stuff, a lot of people are mocking him at 5 to the Giants right now. So I didn't want to do that just because I don't know if they would do that themselves, but we'll see. I did have them taking a tackle, so I mean, it makes sense why. With that being said, though, Miami, same thing. They take Mansour Delane, the LSU corner, no change there. The Cowboys end up taking Keldrick Falk, one of my favorite edges in this class. He tested pretty well, and that's not even really why I moved him up. I just felt like the way the board was falling, it made more sense for them to go defensive lineman here because Keldrick Falk is not going to make it to them the next time around. And then the same exact thing here, Jerron McCoy going to the Rams at 13, which, I think just makes sense. I think they're going to pick a corner with that first pick, personally.
Yeah, I remember we originally had him taking the corner from Clemson, so like I obviously McCoy, in my opinion, is slightly better, but obviously he's dealing with an injury. Falk to Dallas makes perfect sense because as you mentioned, they won't be there with the other pick, and because yeah, they pick after us, so he won't be there with the other pick, and then Miami's the same pick as we had before.
Yeah, and good point with us taking Avion Terrell at 13 last time. But like you said, Jermon McCoy is a little bit better, and with the Cowboys passing on McCoy for Falk, it opens up the Rams' ability to take him there. So, with that being said, the Ravens. I knew you were going to hate this because you hated it last time. The Ravens take I
I still don't know how to say his
Loane.
name completely, but they call him Vega.
I know. So Vega Loane goes to Baltimore once again. That's the same as last time. Now, the biggest change is Kenyon Sadiq going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 15. Now, again, I would have had them take defensive line, but I felt at this moment with how well he tested, it makes sense for them to go get another weapon simply because Baker Mayfield struggled a little bit last year towards the end of the year. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both aging. I didn't want to take a receiver here because they also have Egbuka. But I just think Sadiq with his testing numbers, he's going to fly up people's draft boards. So that's really why I had him go there. That will probably change by, the next mock draft we do, but we'll see. And then at 16, I have the first wide receiver coming off the board, Carnell Tate to the New York Jets, which I love this fit. I love the pick, and they also would love this if Carnell made it all the way to 16.
Absolutely. Love the pick to the Ravens as much as I mean I hate that it's not the Lions, but that's my guy. Every year I fall in love with some interior lineman. This year it's him.
Oh, did we lose you? All right, well, we will move on to the next three picks, which will be all the way up here. Shout out to Stick to the Model. With that being said, though, we are now on the Detroit Lions draft pick. They, again, this is the same, and I think it's going to stay the same probably as
Can you
this.
hear me?
I can hear you now. But this is probably going to stay the
Testing.
same. Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry, man. I don't know what's going
All
on.
good. But with that being said, TJ Parker to the Detroit Lions yet again at 17. I think I'm never going to stop mocking this until Keldrick Falk somehow goes all the way to 17, which I don't see happening in any of my mocks. But I just think he is the quintessential Detroit Lion. I mean, the way he plays, 6'3", 260, a plus athlete. Now, he's not the, shiftiest defensive lineman. He's not a finesse rusher, but he's a power rusher and a good run defender, which is exactly what the Lions like. And this guy was, mocked in the top five before the season started. So obviously he had a little bit of a down year, but if you look at the film, he was getting a little bit more looks from the offensive line. I also think he was asked to do a little bit different stuff. So that's why I like TJ Parker for the Lions. I just think it makes so much sense. It's basically a lock. I also don't think anybody else will take him before us. So I think this is a match made in heaven. 18, I did switch this with a different safety. Last time we went the safety out of Toledo. This time we're going Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon. He just had a great combine. Like, that's what it comes down to. I think they're 1A, 1B, and it's up to you to decide which one you like more. But I think Dylan definitely tested a little bit better. And now, McNeil Warren, I'm sorry, I think I said that incorrectly. No, I think I said that right. Let me just run with the way I had it, I guess. The safety out of Toledo, excuse me, did not test poorly, but just not quite as good. And I think Dylan, really, really flew up draft boards. And then we have Caleb Lomu, the other Utah tackle, going to the Carolina Panthers, which, obviously tackle might not be their biggest need, but they do need it, and they have an aging, uh, uh, right tackle right now. So I do think Lomu could make some sense there. But yeah, that's my next three.
Yeah, I like Parker. Once again, at least for me, going back to my like free agent needs, depending on what happens with free agency, assuming we still need an edge if we don't get. Actually, I can see us getting Parker even if we get Phillips, but not if we get Hendrickson. But I love Parker. It's a great pick, especially with my lineman Vega gone. Dylan, like you mentioned, had a phenomenal combine. He's flying up boards. He was already up boards anyways, but he's going up even further. And then Caleb Blomu is prior to Decker coming back was the left tackle I personally had circled for us at 17. Um, but thankfully, with him coming back, we can at least kick the can down the road a little bit.
Yeah, and I think most people did with Lomu. He was just kind of the guy that was always there and made the most sense, and which is kind of the way that I thought with the Panthers too when I made that pick. But with that being said, the Cowboys at 20 take Avion Terrell, the corner that we had the Rams taking last time, who then fell down the board, and he didn't fall because of anything he did wrong, just the way that the board fell. The Cowboys would love this though. I think they would have taken Terrell at 12 if they if Keldrick Falk wasn't there and they felt the need to. I think they would have been happy with the talent. Is my point. And I really like Avion Terrell, and I think he would add a lot to this defense. And think about it, they just added Keldrick Falk and Avion Terrell. I think the Cowboys would be very happy. And then Jordan Tyson, a lot of people's wide receiver one goes to at 21 to the Steelers, which I think a lot of people have Jordan Tyson going a lot earlier than I do. But his medicals just scare me, and I think the NFL is going to kind of feel the same. And then at 22, the first interior defensive lineman off the board, Peter Woods to the LA Chargers. Um, to me, I think he's the best one in the draft, but I have seen other people, take a couple other defensive tackles like Caleb Banks or Caden McDonald over him. But I do think he's number one, and I think the Chargers have a huge need at interior defensive line. So
Yeah, as you mentioned, with Tyrell in this mock going to Dallas, in addition to Falk, that's a hell of a get by Dallas. They would be giddy with this draft. Tyson, as you mentioned, I've seen a lot of people mention him as like the wide receiver one, right up there with Tate, but does have the medical concerns, so I fully understand why he fell a little bit. And then Woods, I do like. I personally like Banks a little more, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with Woods. Depending on how the board fell, I can even potentially see the Lions taking Woods if a certain amount of dominoes, I'll just say, fall
mhm.
before us.
Yeah, and I definitely agree on that. With that, the Eagles at 23 take Cassius Howell, the edge out of Texas A&M. He didn't even get drafted in the first round last time. And this isn't necessarily because the player, not that he tested poorly or anything. I think he tested pretty well. Um, but Kenyon Sadiq not being there kind of changes the board for them quite a bit. I almost went Caleb Banks here, but I just felt like they'd have a bigger need at edge. And I do like Howell, the player, so I think he also fits what the Eagles want out of their edge rushers. And then at 24, the Browns take Makai Lemon, the wide receiver out of USC. I do think Makai Lemon is a great player, but he probably will fall down boards because I've heard a lot of bad things about his interviews and his attitude. So we'll see how that plays out, but that's partially why I had him falling a little bit. And then at 25, Caleb Banks, the guy we've mentioned a couple times, goes to the Chicago Bears because Jervon Dexter is likely out of town, and they replace him with another Florida defensive tackle. So I think they'd be very, very happy with that.
Absolutely. I'm not too fond of Howell personally, but if anybody, I can see Phil. I shouldn't say if anyone, he's going to get drafted, but I can see the Philly kind of stopping the slide and just taking the talent. They often just take whoever falls slash comes to their lap because I have seen some other mocks have how I don't want to say much higher, but probably around the 15 range, which I thought was unique. I have to go back and look at the film to see what they see for that. Lemon, in my personal opinion, was like the biggest faller from the combine, as you mentioned. He is a heck of a football player, but I've heard nothing but bad things about interviews and attitude during drills and whatnot. So um, I'll even say this: like, obviously, there's no teeth to it, but word is like rumor, I should say, rumor has it, there's even talks of potentially him wanting to go to a certain team and trying to tank his stock, is how bad some of the stuff went, according to some of the internet rumors out there. And then Banks to the Bears, I hate just because I really like Banks. Like I said before, he's my favorite D tackle in this class, and that would be a hell of a get for the Bears, and I don't want to deal with them.
Yeah, and I definitely would agree with that. I would hate it if they got him. But with that being said, the Buffalo Bills take Denzel Boston, the receiver, out of Washington. This is an absolute slam dunk for the Bills, in my opinion. Denzel Boston has shades of Justin Jefferson, in my opinion. Now, do I think he's going to be as good? Probably not, but they are, I think, similar style players. And I really like the player Denzel Boston. I think he's very underrated in this draft class. Um, Caden Proctor, the tackle slash guard, goes to San Francisco. I think they would draft him and figure it out later just because he is that big and athletic. And I think they have needs at tackle and guard. They have needs at right tackle, left tackle, and guard. So it just makes sense. Get the guy who can kind of plug and play. And he's also a little bit more pro ready than the next guy that we'll talk about, which I am not exactly sure how to pronounce the last name, so I'll just call him Max. But Max, the tackle out of Arizona State, tested through the freaking roof, and he was already a highly touted prospect. Um, but his testing numbers really helped him, and that's why he moves into the first round for me. Especially because, excuse me, the Texans have a huge need at tackle now that they traded away their starter at right tackle, and they traded a depth offensive lineman to the Lions, Juice Scruggs. So I think it makes a lot of sense that they go tackle here. Unfortunately for them, all of the absolute day one starters are already gone, so they have to kind of settle for a project that could go pretty well.
Yeah, Boston to Buffalo. That's gonna be a little tiny bit of a tongue twister. Is a match made in heaven. I feel like that's just like Parker being on the other side of Hutch. It is great for Buffalo. True number one receiver. They would be thrilled. I am not big on Proctor, and I've seen several mocks that have Proctor to the Lions, especially since some say tackle, some say guard, some say he could be left guard for 1 year and then move him over to tackle after Decker retires. He's got a ton of promise, and I hate to say it, but everyone looks good in highlight films. He has some pretty good highlights. Obviously, he's a number one um, or first round draft pick. Someone will take him in the first round, in my opinion. But I am glad that it is not us in this scenario. I can totally see San Francisco doing this because, as you mentioned, they have a plethora of needs on that line. And then, in terms of Max, I did hear his name during the combine, but I have not watched any film on him. But Houston, as you mentioned, is desperate in need of an O line. Even prior to making their two trades, because they traded away 40% of their starting O line. Their O line needed help to begin with, even before that. So next man up, I totally understand, and yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know the player himself, so if he's the next man up, then you got to take him. You have to take O line, in my opinion, if you're Houston. Obviously, you just traded for David Montgomery. Who's going to block for him?
Yeah, very true. And I this is a no trades. I probably would trade down or try to trade down if I was Houston. But with no trades possible, they take, like you said, they kind of have to take an offensive lineman. And then we will just go ahead and round it out with the last four picks. The LA Rams, they do something different. They take a linebacker this time around, CJ Allen from Georgia. I just felt like he was the best player on the board that was in need of theirs. Um, I probably could have gone corner, but they already went corner. I could have gone edge, but there's not that great of edges right now. So I went ahead and grabbed what I think might be BPA period, CJ Allen, the linebacker from Georgia. And then Caden McDonald, the D tackle from Ohio State, goes to the Broncos. We kind of already had this conversation. I do think last time I had them taking Caleb Banks, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but either way, we stay with the defensive tackle. And I think Denver, just wants to build on what is already very good for them. And then at 31 to the Patriots, we have Blake Miller, the offensive tackle, another tackle. This might be the record for tackles in the first round. Also, I think there's 4 or 5 Clemson players drafted in the first round. So how did they suck? I don't know, but if this actually happens, that would be kind of crazy. They would have, I think, more players drafted in the first round than Ohio State if it goes this way. Which, the reason I had them take Blake Miller is
One
because
less.
they just one less. Oh, okay. So they just need tackle. They need offensive line help in general, and I think getting Drake May some protection. I would have went wide receiver, but I do think they'll go wide receiver in the second round, which will help free up, to release Stephon Diggs. And then to round out the draft at 32, the Seahawks take Colton Hood, the corner from Tennessee. I think this is the same pick we had last time. I just think it
It
makes too
is.
much sense. So not too much to add on that. It just makes so much sense that I think the Seahawks would be crazy if they didn't take a corner.
Yeah, I like um, all of these picks. CJ Allen, last podcast I was not familiar with, and I was kind of embarrassed by that, so I went and looked up some film, and I'm more familiar with him. Um, Very good linebacker, in my opinion, probably the second best linebacker besides Styles in the draft, and the Rams do have a need. So, I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to overuse it, but a match made in heaven and kind of a dream pick there. Talent meets need. McDonald, same kind of thing where I don't even know honestly if it's a need, but Denver is stacking their defense and are obviously defensive heavy as is. And I love, like, don't get me wrong, obviously you should fill your holes, but I love just overpowering people at one position and saying, here we are, stop us, and adding McDonald to that defensive line that already has so much talent. That would be a nightmare for whoever's going to be matched up against them. Blake Miller, as you mentioned, he would be the third Clemson guy between Woods and Parker to be drafted here.
Avion
And
Terrell.
oh, you're right. I forgot about Terrell. So it would be tied because OSU had Downs, Styles, McDonald, and Tate. So they would each
Mhm.
have 4. So yeah, then I, like you said, I don't know how they sucked in college, but um, they're producing NFL guys at least. And you have your franchise quarterback. I was 50-50 on May, but clearly he has what it takes to at least lead the franchise. Get him protection. I go over and over. I'm not going to beat a dead horse with this pick here, but O-line's beyond important, so you protect your franchise. And then Colton Hood, as we mentioned last time, is that's the same pick we had. And once again, kind of piggybacking on the Denver ideology, Seattle's got a lethal defense, and you're adding more talent to it at a position of need. So everything just kind of combines there, and Sean McDonald will be once again having one of the top defenses in the league.
Yeah, for sure. And with that said, that's all we have for today. We went a little long, but that's all right. Post combine mock drafts and all that. It's a lot of fun to kind of break this stuff down and go through it. As you know, we will be back next week. Most likely Wednesday, but we shall see. We will keep you guys updated on what day we will be live. With that being said, though, as always, we appreciate you guys for watching. If you haven't yet, check out Stick to the Model because it is a lot of fun. That's what we use for our mock drafts. That's what we use for our Be a GM simulator. And if you go ahead and use our link or click our link and use our code MFN 2026, you will save money on the premium, which I think the premium is worth it. It's a lot of fun. You get to do a lot of different stuff once you have premium. So check that out. And also, link is in the description for Fanatics. I'm actually wearing a Fanatic shirt right now, Jared Goff shirt
Me
jersey.
too.
They have a
Different
lot of
sport,
good
but it is
stuff.
from Fanatics.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff, and I know you guys probably hear a lot of crap being talked about Fanatics, about jerseys and everything. Don't buy the jersey then. I'll tell you, they have a lot of good stuff outside
Yeah.
of jerseys. So it's definitely worth it. And it's cheap stuff too. I mean, look, dude, it's licensed, okay, and it's cheap. I'm sorry if it doesn't last 20 years. Like, it is what it is, man. I'm not that worried about it, if I'm being honest. I would rather, buy one of these every 2 years than buy a $70 shirt every 3 or 4. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I
So,
I saw some people bashing Fanatics for some reason. I'm like, I like my stuff from there, and I'm not even saying that because they're a sponsor. So
yeah, and like I'm a really big fan of their NBA jersey specifically. I probably wouldn't buy an NFL jersey from them if I'm being honest, just because you can buy them from the licensed place that like the real NFL jersey from the NFL team for similar price. But their NBA jerseys are really nice, and I think they're worth spending the money on. So with that being said, click the link in the description and check them out. But as we know, that's all we got for this show. Once again, we appreciate you guys for watching. You can find me at JSoSweet. You can find James at Gullet_James. And you can find us both at MIFB Network and MichiganFootballNetwork.com. And we will see you guys.